Now, the other main city I served in, Kharkov, those were the two main cities in the mission, was Donetsk and Kharkov. Donetsk in the south and Kharkov in the north. And Kharkov was a lot less of that industrial factory feel that Donetsk has. It has more of like a modern European feel, not as much as Kyiv, and it's still very Eastern European and all in that regard. But it definitely is like a kind of a cleaner city. There's nicer shops. The grocery stores were a lot better, I thought. And in general, I don't know, just the missionaries had found more things to do there, I guess. They had more like, they knew about more like different stands that had the good food, that they knew about like different, there was a couple guys in this flea market that would sell ties to missionaries for really cheap, for like $2.50 a piece. So there was like this tie guy up in Kharkov that missionaries would go to all the time and buy ties from him. So I think I came home with like over 100 ties actually, because the nice ties I get from him, but even going to like thrift stores, you could get them for like 10 cents a piece. But it just, in general, it was more of like a, and I don't want to say it's like a, I don't actually remember which city is bigger population-wise, Kharkov or Donetsk, but I do know that it just had more of like a city type feel, whereas Donetsk kind of felt more of a hub where people would come to, I just travel and work and do things, and had more of like a grimier feel of a city. Kharkov felt more like what you would think of as like a city, like had some like culture behind it. And that's not to say Donetsk lacks culture, because it definitely, the mining culture and just the Soviet culture is still strong there, as opposed to Kharkov was more of like a Western, trying to embrace more of the Western feels. Not nearly as much as Kyiv, but compared to Donetsk at least. So that's kind of the main striking difference. I remember when I first got there, I just remember thinking how much nicer Kharkov was, I thought, at least, especially this district of Saltivka that I was in. In Kharkov, the northern city, the not industrial city, there's this giant flea market called Barabashova, and it was like famous to all the missionaries. You'd take a bus over there, and on P days you just see this giant, it seems like its own city almost, with all like the coverings and everything, but instead it's just this giant flea market under there. And missionaries loved it because they could go and just find the best deals on whatever. This is where, again, we got all our ties, but a lot of missionaries would get butterfly knives, they get small tasers, they get all kinds of cool clothes, they get nice belts, and it was all just really good prices, really cheap. I remember I got a flashlight laser pointer and a taser together for $10. And it was from this guy from Afghanistan that was just working there. The taser eventually broke because it was so cheap, but I just remember that was so fun to a lot of these missionaries, because you'd go and you'd find the most random things for decent prices in this huge city almost that's just selling all kinds of garbage, but you thought it was cool just because it was so different, really.
So you'll find a lot of buildings, like it's almost like if you see like an aerial view, it looks like just like a bunch of Legos or something. Like it's very, on a block you'll have 4 buildings, so like one on each side of the block, and then in the middle will be like a playground or like a soccer field or something. So it's kind of like the backyard for all the people who are living in those apartments. And instead of like an apartment complex here where you go up and there's like a balcony with like hallways or whatever, it's, you'll have a building along a street, and then there'll be 4 or 5, or even some longer, some shorter, kind of entrances to a stairwell. And then you'll go up and there'll be like 3 or 4 apartments on each floor and like the thing, and then there'll be like the next stairwell over in the building. And so it kind of works over. And so that's like each one of those is called a podъезд. And so you'll see a lot of the buildings where they just look exactly the same. So it's can be kind of tricky to like get oriented at first if you're just kind of lost, because it's hard to have like a landmarker, because in some areas, because it's just so many buildings that all look exactly the same, because they were just built and just to try to house as many people as possible. But I mean, normally wake up, most people work 6 or 7 days a week. Can be really hard because Monday is kind of the day that people usually have off. And so it's most people work on Sundays. So it can be kind of hard that dealing with church and getting people to church and people finding time to come to church. Most people use public transportation or walk. So there's a lot of people are very slender just because they walk so much. And it's, like you go out and you catch a shuttle bus that's going, or there'll be like a trolley In a lot of bigger cities, there'll be a trolley that you hop on, and it just like goes around the tracks, kind of. And so you can just take either one of those, and you just go to wherever will get you closest to where you need to go, and then you hop off. And it's usually not very expensive. You pay for like per ride, so it doesn't matter how far you go. Like you can ride it all the way around the entire time if you want to like ride the thing the entire time. So sometimes actually in like the winter we would just get on the trolley bus, not a trolley bus, a trolley car. It's called a tramway. And my parents would go and just to talk to people, because if it was really cold outside, then people wouldn't want to talk about the cars are heated. And so you could go inside and just sit down next to people and talk to them and try to find people to teach that way. And people get up and go to work and they come home, and people don't like letting strangers in late at night. So it's like, 7 o'clock, whatever. There's after 7, if you're trying to go tracting, it's late. It's too late at night. People won't let you in a lot of times. And that's pretty much everyone has a dacha, which is like a cottage outside the city, and they'll have like a little garden. And so it's, especially in the summer months, they like to spend the weekends on the dacha and go out, and usually there's like on a river or a lake or something, so they'll go swimming and kind of play and just kind of get out and go camping kind of in their cabin, in the cottage house, outside of the city. And that's kind of like their getaway, to kind of get away from the hustle and bustle of the city. And they're very health conscious, so it's get away and where there's cleaner air and cleaner water and everything, and grow their own fruits and vegetables, so it's healthier kind of thing. The weather, you get 4 real seasons. Like you get a definitive like spring, summer, fall, winter. So nice, and you'll go from 9,500 degrees in the summer to -30, -35 degrees in the winter, depending on where you're at. And it's if you buy coats and bundle up, it's not too bad in the winter. I don't mind cold weather, but it gets hot. It gets really hot in the summer, like really hot, and it's really humid. But it's very doable. But I really enjoyed. I liked having like 4 distinct seasons. It was kind of the first place I'd ever lived that really had those. Crime and safety. We never really ran into any issues with anything. It's kind of, you won't have any issues as long as you're smart about what you do. Like if you notice a group of people who are noticeably drunk walking down the street, you should avoid talking to them or whatever. So it's, just kind of using common sense and listening to the spirit of like, to decide like, oh, maybe just avoid talking to those people, or like, let's cross the street so we can, because there potentially something may happen. But I never, ran into any issues with anything.
In Ukraine, first off, we called ourselves a BMW mission. Buses, metro, and walking. You don't have a lot, you don't rely on your own transportation. You get used to the maps. If you're in a city that is fortunate enough to have a subway like Kharkov, then it is incredibly efficient. It is cleaner than anything you'll find in the States. It's even cleaner than what you find in Japan. They are incredibly well kept, and they are very efficient. The bus systems are interesting. You have routes that'll go all over to different parts of the city. You don't know necessarily what's going to happen. You have to make sure that you have a bus map, and that will be included in most town maps that you would buy and use normally. Because of this, you get used to kind of hopping back and forth and getting from place to place in perhaps not the most efficient manner, but you learn to make do. More often than not, you spend your whole day walking. You are talking to people on the streets. That's considered a lot more effective than tracting. Although winter, you tract instead because you're frozen. But in the summer, you're always walking. It almost seems a shame to take a bus anywhere when you can walk and talk to people on the way there. Many of your areas are places where you can get from one end to the other with walking comfortably. Now, if you have to get from an appointment from one place to another, you better know the marshutki, the bus routes. But when you get in the buses, it's very crowded. Don't expect seat belts. expect to be standing. Your young men, it would be polite to be standing, especially if there are women on board or older gentlemen, then you would expect to stand. And you'll expect to have as many people crammed in there as humanly possible. You will get to know your neighbors very well because they will be pressed up against you. It's normal. You will always have enough to eat. You may not have the most delicious thing to eat depending on the year. Produce varies greatly depending on whether it's in the summer when it's cheap and plentiful, and in the winter it's none too appetizing perhaps, but you will always be able to eat. They take care of you. Your housing, you can expect all of your apartments to have some sort of quirk, whether it's we only have one working electrical socket in the entire place, or the toilet screams like a banshee, or various other things. Everything has sort of its own flavor. But you will always be in an apartment. You will typically be only 2 missionaries to an apartment. Very rarely will you put 4 missionaries in an apartment. And you'll be located within your own area. The majority of members are very much middle class. Occasionally you'll find someone who is a doctor or a businessman. But by and large, you will find that a lot of the members will talk about how much more affluent they've become since joining the church, because they're learning to budget their money. They're learning to live wisely. They're no longer spending a lot of their money on vodka, for example. A lot of these will be told, and you'll see that the members thrive with the gospel. A lot of them come from very humble circumstances, and they rise, and they go much further. As far as activities, very often on your preparation day, you'll go play sports with those who are nearby, unless it's cold, in which case there's sometimes a bowling rink or something nearby. You will have a washing machine in your apartment more often than every time. I've never known of an apartment which didn't have a washing machine, or at least a centrifuge for the bathtub. Groceries are typically very easy to get. They will be very close to the bus stop, or they will be close to your house, or they'll be close to a metro stop. And there are little bread bakeries everywhere. If you let them, they will rob you of all of your money, because they have delicious chocolate-filled croissants and strawberry-filled croissants, and you just can't have one. And, well, there's another one. We've been working for an hour. We might as well get another. Petty crime is very common. There are lots of jokes made about organized crime. I cannot testify to how prevalent it actually is or is not. I can say I was pickpocketed. I don't know what happened to my wallet. It disappeared. But you should not be worried about any violent crime. Closest you would have to worry about is occasionally someone will yell out, "Go home, Yankee!" They're probably drunk, which means that with a brisk walking pace, you'll be able to avoid them and their jeers and insults, because they're not going to be able to chase you. You will never encounter anti-Mormons. Most people don't know what the church is at all. People actually said, towards the end of my mission, I saw this weird South Park episode, and they said it was about Mormons, but it was confusing. Because the translation was done so poorly, nothing made sense, fortunately. And so South Park actually became a great source for us to start distributing copies of the Book of Mormon, because people were honestly curious, because it made no sense what South Park was saying with their lies. Very convenient. Very convenient. But you will find lots of Jehovah's Witnesses. They are a common faith. But other than that, many of the people who profess to be part of the Russian Orthodox faith will do that because in Russian it's pravoslavny. It means, just like the word Orthodox, the right way to glorify God. However, it sounds a lot like the right thing for Slavs. So many people consider this mostly their ethnic duty as opposed to their religious duty. And you'll get people who will tell you, well, I hate Jews because Jews killed Jesus and Jesus was a Russian. And they will honestly believe that. They're not very educated. More than often, by far, the most common thing that you'll encounter is people who are atheists. They have absolutely no faith at all. And a lot of time, they don't have much hope. They feel like if there is a God, then the trials that they're dealing with in their country are just desserts for all of the crimes that were committed over the years, or they'll talk about what happened with losing family to the gulags, and how their father, who was an engineer, disappeared suddenly and they never heard from him again. And so if anything is lacking, it's an epidemic of hope. You will not find people who will want to fight you, but you will find lots of people who need hope. And if you manage to bring that into your lesson and teach them about eternal families, you'll very often find people who are willing to listen. Doesn't mean that everyone's going to jump into the baptismal font within a month, but they will be patient, and they will be methodical, and they will listen to you. You'll see lots of old men playing chess and backgammon. They enjoy that. The young men will play sports, especially soccer. And you'll often end up having to squat down. You don't stand when you're talking to young people, you squat. And you'll just squat, and you'll tell them that you don't want them to smoke near you, and they'll be courteous typically, and they won't smoke. Smoking is a very common problem there. There's something like 60% of all women and about that of men are all smoking. But they're very willing to talk and listen.